Now, I have a friend who recently had a university meeting in Singapore, and everything was going fine. She was getting all the questions she was expecting, until the examiner suddenly changed his tone and asked her, and I quote, "In your opinion, do you believe dumb people should be given access to the internet?" And his reasoning behind this train of thought was that since stupid people are less knowledgeable than us and less likely to distinguish between truth and lies, then we shouldn't bother exposing them to information because there is a risk they will get manipulated by fake news in return. Now, I do believe that's rather an extreme point of view, but it does raise an interesting question about how we can protect individuals from fake news in our globally interconnected world. Now, fake news have been becoming growingly threatening for humanity, democracy, and our planet over the course of the past few years. The concept is nothing new, but the impact is becoming more decisive and significant, especially on a political scale. Putting aside the well-known example of a certain presidential election, it is fairly simple to find numerous examples of fake news events that were swayed by false information. France, Canada, the United Kingdom, Mexico, or even Malaysia all reported an increased presence of falsified information during periods of national elections. Now, I'm not here tonight to give you a dark and depressing perspective about the future of reliable information in the modern world. Rather so, I am here to outline the methods and solutions we need to start implementing to finally take down fake news for good. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, but haven't attempts at suppressing fake news already been made by government and companies in the past? And while you're indeed correct, we can only note that such attempts have unfortunately been quite unsuccessful at achieving significant change. Take Facebook, for example. They have made several changes to the algorithms over the past decade to protect user data and ensure that fake news have a limited impact on their platform. But the 2016 American presidential election revealed that there are still deep flaws lying within their system. Take Google as a second example. They have often been criticized for doing too little, too less to ban and censor fake news online. And although they have recently pledged $300 million in spending that will go towards funding new initiatives to combat fake news online, this funding will only prove truly useful if it is spent in productive methods. Too many costly attempts at reforming internet platforms have already been made, and they simply don't provide a long-term solution. Now, beyond companies, government also made their own efforts by implementing fake news legislation and imposing legal sanctions on individuals found guilty of spreading misinformation online. However, such practices have often been branded as a means of suppressing freedom of expression and censoring criticism against the government. Finding a balance between justice and efficiency without infringing upon a basic human right can prove to be rather difficult to do so. We have numerous solutions at our disposal, but we don't know yet how to use them efficiently. So, what do we do next? We obviously have a very serious problem, but what are the available solutions? To answer this question, I've therefore synthesized 5 methods I believe could be the key to finally win the war on fake news. Now, I've already mentioned that existing fake news legislations are largely inefficient. The main flaws that reside within such legislation is that it fails to draw a clear line at what is truly considered fake news. It virtually makes no difference between a reliable website, a fake news website, a satire, or an opinion editorial. And a strategy that is often used by prominent fake news websites, such as InfoWars, is to brand their articles as opinion-based editorials, which are directly used based on the opinion of the journalist. And because freedom of expression and freedom of the press is enshrined in the constitution of several countries, government can very difficultly ban and censor such website. Hence, rather than introducing new piece of legislation, what we could do is use already existing cybersecurity legislation and refresh them to include fake news within their scope. In Singapore, for example, political experts and civil rights activists have recommended making use of already existing legislation rather than introducing new ones. The problem that will arise with trying to craft a legislation out of nowhere is that it will likely face opposition from the broader public. Hence, this comprehensive solution will be a more effective measure to finally tackle fake news. Now, let's stop for a second and imagine a theoretical scenario. Let's say Facebook, for example, designed a brand new initiative to finally tackle fake news online. Mark Zuckerberg, all jolly and happy that he is, shows up to the American Congress and asks for the legal permission to implement the system on a national scale. But for some reason, he gets denied. And when he asks why, the Congress answers, well, we simply don't have enough legal or technological information to ensure that the solution will actually be useful. And so now the solution gets dropped, we're back to square one, and nothing has been done. To solve this problem, I will recommend implementing a form of collaboration. And beyond collaboration, what we are especially looking for is a three-way collaboration, one that goes between government, companies, and political experts. All of the three parties I just mentioned have very different working methods and very different ideas, but their objective remains the same. We've seen it during the congressional hearings of Mark Zuckerberg in late April. Politicians have very, very limited understanding of social media and technology. But we can't really blame them because they're all 70 years old on average. But you see, the problem is that these politicians are the ones who are responsible for crafting legislation on social media, although they don't seem the one to have sufficient knowledge to do so. The solution will therefore be to implement a sort of working channel between government and companies, such as they can work together to finally design a solution that will provide a long-lasting, working, and effective measure to tackle fake news, and to prevent cases where companies will lobby for a solution that will protect their own interest rather to think of the greater public. Political experts could be used as moderators that will criticize and evaluate solutions presented by both parties in order to reach a global consensus. This will therefore eliminate cases where individuals and companies fight for their own benefits rather than thinking of the global scale. Now, getting rid of fake news might be a very, very ambitious way to approach a problem, and maybe it will be more effective if we could actually teach individuals to identify fake news by themselves. And how can we achieve this? By reforming the education system. We need to be able to teach students from a very young age to properly identify and reject pieces of information they perceive as false, and to develop a critical and analytical thinking. The IB is a good example of such an education system because it incorporates disciplines such as theory of knowledge that challenges the direct core of our knowledge. The right question to ask here is, how do we know that what we know is true? Unfortunately, it is far from being the same case on an international scale. Very few national systems actually take in consideration this important aspect of education. I spent a couple of my middle school years in the French system, which is still largely focused on assimilating and regurgitating pre-digested information rather than making your own critical judgment. I'm not saying that we should completely rethink the way education works. Rather so, I am saying that by incorporating new elements within the curriculum, we can ensure that students finally have a healthier relationship with technology. And speaking of technology, it has often been branded as the one tool that helps fake news spread online to reach viral levels in a couple of minutes. But I quite frankly believe it is time to use technology at our advantage and to quite literally fight algorithms with algorithms. The development of artificial intelligence makes it possible for internet giants to properly identify and take down fake news online. The technology involved will scan the content of an actual article, compare it with the title of the said article before cross-checking the information presented with dozens of other articles found online. This will therefore help to determine whether such website can be considered as reliable or fake. However, such technology will have to be used with caution. Fake news are constantly made to look more authentic and realistic, and could easily manipulate an artificial intelligence into thinking a website is actually real. Now, human intelligence remains the key to the problem, but supporting it with efficient technological means could largely benefit us. Now, I also want to move on from the broader picture and talk about how you, the audience, can help make a positive difference in the fight against fake news. A very well-known American research center, MIT, recently conducted a study on the spread of fake news on Twitter. And the finding revealed quite a lot about the human factor that plays into a role into the spread of fake news online. Their findings reveal that it takes an average of 6 times faster for fake news to reach 1,000 individuals rather than real news. In addition, fake news are also 70% more likely to get retweeted and shared online, and even more concerning, humans are actually even faster than Twitter bots at retweeting false information when it is presented to them. It's a natural human reaction to seek for information when we hear rumors of a breaking news being spread around. We hate staying in the dark and remaining ignorant, but we also have to take in consideration where and how do we obtain information. Caught in the heat of the moment, we are likely to make a hasty decision and share information without really thinking about where is it coming from. And by doing so, we therefore risk becoming a player in the cycle of fake news. Take a look at these two tweets, for example. Paul Krugman is a very well-known reporter for the New York Times, who's known in America to be a solid and reliable news outlet, unless you have the perspective of a Trump supporter. But Krugman was reporting on apparent cases of cholera observed in Puerto Rico following Hurricane Irma in 2017. Now, it turned out that such cases were apparently non-existent. Now, he did in fact correct his mistake, but just take a look at a number of likes and retweets. The fake news tweet was shared more than 14,100 times, while the correction was barely shared 500 times. So now you potentially have 13,500 individuals going around in America thinking there's cholera in Puerto Rico. And although it remains a rather harmless example, it is a good illustration of the growing power of fake news on social media. My final advice to you will therefore to keep on getting updated. Keep on following news closely, get your news from a range of sources, always consider whether your information is credible or not before sharing it, and most importantly, keep an open and critical mind about everything you see, hear, or read online. Thank you very much.